Today I want to cover layers and explain to you how they work. I briefly talked about them the other day when we discussed the setup for the mask assignment in creating a template layer. So the first thing that we need to do is look at our panel here with layers, and by default you're given one layer. You can add as many layers as you want. I believe it's almost unlimited. You'll notice in the layers panel there's a fair number of options for us. We have the little eye icon similar to what you would see in Photoshop and other programs, which enable you to turn on and off layers. You can also click the little box next to it, and there's a little lock symbol that allows you to lock it so you can't accidentally move or draw on that layer. You can also double click where it states, or it says layer 1. A little layer options panel emerges, or a fly out window here, and it allows you to rename it. So you can name it whatever you want. So if you're building an illustration that's comprised of parts, you can call it base layer, my drawing layer. Let's just do that, drawing layer. And these can always be renamed. You also you can pick additional colors. You'll notice that are represented when you actually look at the outline. And they have a number of presets. You can put in whatever color you want. It also allows you to turn any layer on into a template. It allows you to lock them from here. If you do not want the layer to print, you have to deselect it, uncheck it. Even though it may be turned off and you have the eye icon deselected and it's not visible, when you go to print, if its print is checked, it will print anyway. So you may get things printed that you do not want. Okay? When you select a template layer, you'll notice that it automatically dims the image, as we noted last time. It locks the layer and it allows you to see it, and it knows that you don't want to print it, so it turns that off. That's what it does when you do that. And you can always toggle on and off. They don't have to remain template layers. Okay, so you'll notice I renamed that one. You'll notice it's indicated by blue. That's default for the first layer. Let's look at the bottom down here. There's a couple that we can't use quite yet. But if I move over here, you'll see I can create a new sub-layer within this. We can have layers within layers. Fundamentally, you have layers within layers anyway, but you can create new groups, new sub-layers within here. If you want an entirely new layer, that's what this little box is here next to it. It's a little page, looks like a little page that's dog-eared. You click on that and we create a brand new layer. And notice that this one is now marked by red. So any shape we create in here, whatever stroke you see before it's deselected will be indicated by the color red. There's also a little fly-out window up here. We can create new layers from here, sub-layers here. We can also duplicate layers from here. Or if you want to duplicate the layer, just like in Photoshop, you click on it, you drag it onto that icon that enables you to create a new layer, and it automatically makes a copy of it. If you want to delete the layer, you select it, you select the little trash can, it throws it away permanently. So it's done, it's gone. You'll notice to the right there is a little dot here. What this does is it allows you to control the appearance of that layer. And we'll talk about that later. Okay? Also in the flyout window, we can flatten artwork, meaning if you have 2 layers, 3 layers, 10 layers, 100 layers, and later on you decide I want to collapse everything into one layer, you can do that from here. And again, we can turn it into a template from here. We can release a sequence of layers. We can release layers to build. We can do a variety of things from here. Paste, remember layers, that is an important part of the exercise that you'll be doing. Okay, so let me show you what happens. Even when I'm going to go ahead and delete layer 2. We're going to start with just the drawing layer. So I'm going to start by creating some rectangles here. And watch what happens under the layers panel here. And you'll see every time I create a new object, it's automatically layered on top of the previous object that I created. So I'll go ahead and instead of white fill, I'm going to go ahead and reverse this. So I have no stroke, and I have a black fill when I create this box. And these will look like cards. And you'll notice that as soon as I create something, I have a little twirly here, this little arrow that allows me to click and twirl down to see what paths are available under here. Rather than just leave the name path, if there's something that you have, a shape that you've created that you want to remember, rather than just path 1, 2, 3, or just path, you can double click on it and you can rename it as well. You can rename these whatever you wish. I'm going to make copies of these and watch what happens. When I hold down the Option key and I click and I drag, notice that it makes an identical version of it, but it's automatically created on top of it. When I click the red, you'll notice for the fill color instead of black, you'll see that it changes. You'll notice the stacking order in layers. The layer on the top is on the top. The layer on the bottom is on the bottom, just that. If you had a stack of papers, the ones that are at the top of the order would be the top of the stack of papers. The one at the bottom would be at the bottom. Okay. Let me go ahead and make a few more of these, and I'm going to show you some things that we can do here. And I'm going to change the color of it. I'm going to make another copy, and I'm going to change the color of it. And I'm going to make one more copy, and I'm going to change the color of it. Okay? Notice the stacking order here. There is a way, if you wish to reorder these, you can do it. There's a couple of ways that we can do it. You'll notice that when I have the last one selected, there's a little blue checkbox to the right, or a little square. That indicates that that is selected. Now, if I wish to move it up or down in the stacking order, I can click on that layer, and I can drag it in between one of the other layers, and you'll notice it's in between now. It's in between the red and the yellow. Another way we can move it up or down is the following. We can select the object and go to Object, Arrange, and we can say Bring to Forward, which is where it was before, or no, that just brings it one layer up. So I'm going to go Object, Arrange again. Bring to Front. That brings it all the way to the front as it was before. Or if I want to send it all the way to the back of that layer, I can go Object, Arrange, Send to Back. Notice the keystrokes for each of these. Shift Command bracket right, Shift Command bracket left. Okay, so if I want to send this all the way to the back, I hit Shift Command bracket left. It pushes it all the way to the back. See that? And if I hit Shift Command bracket right, all the way to the top again. If I just hold the Command key down and I hit the bracket key to the left, it sends it down. Hit the left bracket key, it sends it down again, down again, down again. And you'll see in the layers it's moving up or down in the stacking order. Hold down the Command key and hit the right bracket, it continues to bring it up. So you can move within a layer, you can move layers up or down with those sublayers. Now also watch what happens when I select two of these or more of these. I'll select all of them and I hit Command G, or I select Object and I select Group. Watch what happens. It puts all of those objects into something called a group or a container. And when you twirl down here, you'll notice all of these objects now are within this thing called group. So if you want to organize your illustration in terms of parts, and those parts have subparts in them, we can do the following. You can create groups. You can rename them just as we can rename the paths. So if I'll just double click on this, we can say this is a card, cards, like so. And as you've experienced before, to select these, if you use the selection tool, it selects the entire group. We could also select by selecting the box to the right. Notice that when I select that group cards, everything is selected. I can come back out and deselect, and when I click one in between one of the elements within the group, it also allows me to select just one of those and move it independently of the others. That works the same way as selecting the direct selection tool underneath the group selection tool underneath the direct selection tool. And now I can select any of these, move them, do whatever I want to them. And when I'm done, if I go back and I select from here, or I select any one of these with the selection tool, they all select. They're still part of the group. If you wish to ungroup them, you select them, and you go Object, and you select Ungroup, or Shift-Command-G. And now, when you deselect, notice that they're no longer connected to one another. Okay? Let's go ahead and close this so that we simplify it, open up some real estate here in our Layers panel. Click and create a new one. And so I'm going to rename the bottom one, and we'll name it Rectangles. So that's my light blue group. And we'll double click on this one, and I'm going to name it Circles. Circles. So since I don't want to work on rectangles anymore, I'll select it. I'll select the little lock here, so it locks it down. And you'll notice when you have that layer selected and you move across here, and you select any one of these, notice you get that icon, the pencil with a strike through. It means you can't draw on it, you can't move it, you can't do anything to it until you unlock it. That can be a good thing, so that you don't muck up things that you've already worked on by accident. Okay, so you might want to think in terms of organizing your project in layers. Too many layers, I think, can get unwieldy. But start with one, and then later on you'll discover that your illustration, your project may fall together in groups, in clusters, and you might want to think of those in terms of separate layers to organize them a little bit better, especially when you go back to edit them. Something else that you should, let me go back and I want to go back and I'm undoing here. I want to go back and lock this down again. Okay? Now, when you have a group, as I have here, see, here's my card group. If at any time you wish to edit one element of them, or one element in here, one of the things that you can do, which is pretty nifty, but you do have to pay attention, is if you select and you double click on any one of them, notice just what happened. And it looks almost like nothing has happened at all. I can take this one element and I can recolor it, can make it orange. I can take the direct selection tool. I can select on a corner and I can change its configuration. Maybe I should call these quadrangles. But notice up here what I have, I'm actually in that group now. Okay? This is the isolated group. So it isolates elements within that group. Then if I want to go back to the group, I click on this little arrow here, and it takes me back to the scene. And now I'm back in here. Now when I select any of these, whoops, when I select, make sure that I have the layers selected. Notice that they all behave as a group. When I deselect, select one again. Well, come on. Oh, I have the direct selection tool. No wonder. When I select any one of them, they behave as a group. So let me go back. Let me create my new layer again. I'm going to once again name this one Circle. I'm going to lock down the drawing layer for rectangles. And let's go ahead, and you'll notice now I don't have access to any of these. But what I can do until I unlock them, what I can do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select the circle tool, ellipse tool, and make sure that I have the correct layer selected. And I'll proceed to make 5 more shapes. I'll start with the green one. We'll go ahead and I want to make another one here, so let's go ahead and make copies of it. And just as I did before, we'll make some more that are layered on top of one another. Okay, let's make this one yellow so we can see it a little bit better. Okay, now these elements on this layer or organize just the same way that the rectangles were. The first one that you create on that layer is at the base of that layer. Each additional shape you create on top of it is stacked on top of it. Within those groups, and each layer is like a group, the circles curly are on top of the other. If I group all of these, just for the heck of it, let's hit Command G. Even the ones at the bottom of the green, notice that they're on top of all of the others, the rectangles. This whole group lies on top. If you wish to reorganize these, you can do the following. You just click on the layer and drag it beneath the other one. And now notice all of the circles are beneath all of the rectangles. And just as we did before, you can go ahead and you can move them up and down in order within the layer. You can also move them from one layer to another. And how you do that is we'll go ahead and we'll select this. Let's go ahead and Shift Command G to ungroup so that these are now ungrouped again. Let's say, for example, I want to take the yellow circle, and when I select it, you'll notice that the box here is selected. If I want to move it to another layer, I simply click on this little rectangle and drag it up to, now I have to unlock the layer first. Make sure that I have rectangles unlocked. Click on this little square and drag it up to the rectangles, and now notice it pushes it to the top of the circles, and within here you'll notice it pushes it to the very top of the rectangles. So now I've been able to move it. It's no longer in the circle layer anymore. When I look at the rectangles, you'll notice it pushes it on top of that group that I named cards. Here's this other path that's a circle. So you can continually move these up and down any way you see fit. Okay? Now, a couple of other things that we can do. I can select, whoops, let me go ahead and, I'm going to go ahead and ungroup the rectangles. And I'm going to select this yellow circle, and I'm going to select the rectangle. And you'll notice, oh, come on. Oh, I know what I have to do here. I want to make a clipping path. Okay, so in order to make a clipping path, and that's what this one is right here, I have to pick two objects that are directly above and or below one another. So you'll notice that I have the green rectangle, and I have my yellow circle here. I'm going to move the rectangle up so that it's just underneath the yellow circle. I want the yellow circle to be used as a clipping path. What does that mean? It means that as soon as I join these two elements together and use the top element, the circle, as a clipping path, the only part of the rectangle you will see will be that which is contained within the yellow circle. So as soon as I select these now, you'll notice, oh, come on. Select rectangles, there we go. I've got to make sure that rectangles is selected. I can select here, release clipping mask. I click and watch what happens. The attributes of the circle go away. The parts of the rectangle that will remain visible are only that which overlap the circle. Now, I did that with all of these too, so that's not quite what I wanted to do, but that's sort of interesting. Let me undo that once again. These are still, oh shoot, that's still, no, did I select both? Let me go ahead again. Let me go ahead and move, let's go ahead and move this back up here. Whoops. Select this one and this one. So just these two are selected. Let's go ahead and, well, I want to do it. I'm going to go Object. Another place we can do this is make clipping mask from here, and it will do that. There we go. So now I'm only allowing part of it to be visible. If I hit Command Y, it turns off the preview, and you'll see that those shapes remain. Now, for those of you who have Illustrator in CS4, what it has done now, it's integrated parts of Freehand. Freehand was acquired by Adobe when they purchased Macromedia. One of the features that Freehand had which was an equivalent to Illustrator, is that anytime you put or you use a clipping mask, as I have here, it takes this part of the rectangle, and rather than keep it visible, because you really don't need to see it anymore, you only need to see the part that's contained within the circle, is that it hides this. So for, I don't know who has Illustrator or CS4 on their machines here. Anybody? No? Then that's what you will see when you do that. If I hit Command Y, it brings it back. If I wish, and I use the group selection tool, because these are behave like a group, notice that I can move the rectangle within the circle. If I want to uncouple those two, I simply select by using the selection tool, make sure that they're both selected, go to Object, or Object, Clipping Mask, Release, or with them selected, I should be able to select from here. It's not going to let me do it. Okay, make release clipping mask. Okay, so it's not going to let me do it from there. Object, clipping mask, release, and now they're back to the two shapes again, but notice with the circle, when it removed its attributes, they were gone for good until you put something back in there. But it isn't like it was deleted. It's still there. Okay? Clipping masks can be used very nicely because maybe you want to reveal only parts of an image. Remember when we did that with type the other day? I made part of that Corvette image visible only in the type. Well, you can do the same with this. You can have an image behind a photographic image or other parts of your illustration contained only within a shape. So it becomes a little picture window or a mask, as it were, and that works pretty nicely. In a nutshell, this is what layers are about. Okay? Let me, I'm going to create a brand new layer here. And actually, I'm going to select everything else, and I'm just going to delete it. I really don't need these layers anymore. And I'm going to pick another shape, or I'm going to make another shape. Let's just use the pen tool. And let's deselect this. Let's pick red. Pen tool. Triangle here. And I'm going to put these two. I'll select both. Or what I can do with the top one is I'm going to go back to layers. And now when I select, if you only select that one element, this path on top, what I can do now is I can turn this into a clipping mask. And anything else, anything beneath it, will be part of that. So let's go ahead and make another shape. Let's create another circle here, or an ellipse. And let's fill it with orange. And you'll see that it's invisible here until I take the object and I move it within the area of the triangle. So anything that I have here, actually this path should be under here. Okay. And if I wish to release the clipping path, I select it, come back down here, select it again. Why aren't you working? I don't know why it's not working. I'll just select them all. Object, clipping mask, release, and it should go back. There we go, they did. Okay, so those are layers. The exercise that you'll do, it's changed in CS4. Let me show you what it was in CS3 first. Let me go ahead and open that. It was a little clock exercise, and you do all the things that we've done in here. If I scroll down to my folder here, let's go to Miller, and I look at my public folder, and I select lessons. And this, I believe, is it? Yep, this is this one. This is, no, this is the next one. 7, I think it's 8. Yeah, it's 8 in here. If I open up all of these, it's a clock. And it has you, it basically has created all the shapes that you need inside here. You know, from numbers for the clock to a variety of things, and what you end up with is something like so. Okay, with drop shadows and that sort of thing. Now, for example, you'll notice in here, this is one of the things I haven't shown you yet, that all of the letters in here have drop shadows. There's an easy way and there's a hard way to do this. We don't need the fish right now. I'll close the fish. I can put this away for the time being, and I don't need this at the moment. We're going to come back here. So you'll notice, let me select all of my elements on here. Select this, and I'm going to move this aside like so. And 2 elements is fine. I can go ahead and make a third, and we'll make this a different color. We'll make it green just so you can see. I can change, and that's what these little boxes refer to, is the appearance of them, and it will affect only that element. So what I can do is can use effect, for example, stylize, and we can add a drop shadow. And it will only be, whoops, I don't want arrows. Effect, stylize, drop shadow. There we go. And I'll go ahead and look for preview. Notice it only adds it to this single element. And you'll notice as soon as I've added it that instead of an empty circle to the right for appearance, it is now solid, which indicates to me that I've added some sort of effect to it, which alerts me. And in CS4, you'll want the appearance panel up all of the time. It's up right now, hidden over here somewhere, and I don't see it, so I'm going to go to Window. I'm going to look at Appearance, and I guess it was down here. Window. Let's go back to Appearance. It's there. It's right here. This is what I want. And you'll see with that object that the layer is selected, and this particular path is selected. You can see beneath it that drop shadow as an effect has been applied to this. So if I want to change this one particular effect, I can do that and delete it, change its properties, do whatever I want. If I want to remove this effect, I can. Now, you might think to yourself, let's go back again. Let's select this one, and I'm going to remove it. That if I wanted to add a drop shadow to each of these 3 elements, I would have to select them individually. But that's not the case. What we can do is we can apply to an entire layer or subgroup of layers by selecting this little box here, or this little circle here, this appearance panel. And we can go ahead and I can go back up to Effect. And notice it has all of these elements selected. Go back to Effect. And we can select Stylize again, select Drop Shadow, and I click Preview, and I click OK. And notice that all of the elements now have the same drop shadow added. Even though it's not indicated underneath here, underneath the layer itself, it's applied it to that. And every element that you apply or add to that layer will have a drop shadow added. So that can be a plus. It takes a lot of work away. You know, you don't have to remember what the settings were. You don't have to worry about, did I add the drop shadow? It can be a negative if you only want certain elements to have drop shadows on that layer. But as we saw with the clock, we wanted all of the, in that subgroup, we wanted all of the numerals to have shadows. So it was an easy way of doing that. So for example, if I go ahead now and I select the star shape, and I go ahead with yellow, and I click on this layer, and I add the star, notice it automatically has a drop shadow added. I didn't have to worry about applying that. The downside is that even though there are only 4 elements, another downside I should say, is even though there are only 4 elements in here, you'll notice it takes time to move, to redraw many of these. When you do this, when you add many of these effects, it will really slow down in the processing, that it adds a lot of processing power to this, or it requires a lot of processing power from your computer. So it's not always the wisest thing to do. Add these at the very end and be careful how you choose to add layers, or add these effects, I should say. And we'll talk about effects on another day in more detail. But that is, those are layers in a nutshell, okay? Okay, the remainder of today is a work day. You should be working on your mask, and if you haven't started your mask, you should be finishing up your beach scene. That needs to be get done right away. If you don't want to work on either one, go ahead and work on exercises, and when you get them done, make sure that you save them and show them to me periodically, and I'll check them off. Okay? Okay, thank you.